So it's Caitlin Clark and Napheesa Collier, the two captains for the 2025 WNBA All Star Game. And now we know their 8 fellow starters as of last night. The question becomes for the final 12 spots voted on by WNBA coaches, who gets in? Angel Reese and Kelsey Plum were particularly lowly rated among their peers in the player vote. Is that going to hold them back? And who gets the final slots on the bench, guard and forward? And most notably, will we see a WNBA All Star game with potentially 10 players shooting 40% or below? We dig into all that today on Many Ways to Win. On average, the WNBA All Star Game starters are shooting 47% from the floor. And yet, a strange possibility still exists wherein 10 players shoot 40% or below from the field and are named to the All Star rosters. Let's start with two of those potential 10 in Kelsey Plum and Angel Reese. Neither one made the starting 10 for the All Star game. Reese is shooting 40.6% going into July. Her job is a little bit tougher this year. She lost point guard Courtney Vandersloot to a knee injury that ended her season. So now Reese has had to do more playmaking. You may have heard she has a triple double on her card this season. But on the whole, things are tougher for Angel Reese, and not the least of which is because she has to do more playmaking and she has a new coach as well. She's had to adjust systems. When you look at Reese and where she was in the voting, you may say, okay, but I still think she gets in because she's leading the league in rebounding, and WNBA coaches might recognize that particular specialty. More on that in a moment. But also consider the fact that her coach is new, and there are a lot of new coaches around the WNBA, 7 as a matter of fact, and they might not vote the way previous veteran WNBA coaches voted. New coaching also impacting Kelsey Plum. She's in a new situation with Lynn Roberts in Los Angeles, and she is now the star of a Sparks team that has struggled, much like the Chicago Sky. Plum is shooting under 40% from the field as well. And you may start to ask yourself, well, she's scoring 20 points per game. Okay. Yeah, but it's on 38% shooting and 33% from beyond the arc. And those two things, right? Those two things could be things that hold Plum and Reese back from getting into the All Star game. Neither one of them got particular respect from their fellow players, right? They were both ranked below 10 in the player vote. So that is noteworthy, despite the fact that Reese is leading the league in rebounding and Plum is among the league leaders in 3-point shooting, I think 2.5 per game. She's one of only 4 players averaging 20 points per game, right? There are very few who can do that. So here's where this gets tricky. Once you get beyond the starting 10 in the All Star game, reserve voting will sometimes skew in a couple of different directions. They go away from necessarily pure production, pure efficiency, and highlights, right? They go in other directions like defense, we'll say, or other specialty skills like playmaking. They also tend to skew towards winning teams and overall league representation. Now, that actually gives Plum and Reese a bit of a boost because each of them has standout skill, like we've talked about, and they also, despite not being on winning teams, might be the best player on their respective teams, right? With apologies to Ariel Atkins, you could probably say Reese has been the best player on the Chicago Sky. And even though the Sparks are not doing so well right now, De'Erica Hamby, Azrae Stevens in the front court doing decently in LA, it's probably Plum whom you would say is the best one from their team, the Sparks. So she probably gets in, and Angel Reese probably gets in from the Sky, okay? That gets us to 5 players who are shooting 40% or worse from the field this year, potentially, right now, entering the month of July, going to the All Star game, okay? That's Plum, that's Reese, that's, believe it or not, Sabrina Ionescu, that's Satou Sabally, and yes, that is Caitlin Clark, who's currently shooting at 39%. I am assuming here that Clark is going to be healthy for that ball game. So, what about the other 4 players who shoot 40% or below that still might make the All Star game? In fact, there might be 5, although the more likely number is 4. But 5 would make it 10 players shooting 40% or less in the All Star game. Get ready to learn volume scoring. Yes. Remember what I said about leagues wanting every team represented? Okay, here's where we get into that. So you go to the bottom of the table. Who can Connecticut give you? you could pick Tina Charles, okay? She's a veteran. She certainly has the pedigree to be, yeah, voted into the All Star game. But again, for her, her numbers are way down from where they've been at other points in her career. And I do think they're not representative of the player that she is. I think you have to give the nod to Marina Mabrey, who is, yes, shooting less than 40% from the field, but also scoring 15 points per game. 36% is not what you think of when you think of an all star. She's really hooking them up there. But I think she's the best player from the Connecticut Sun. And for that reason, I think she gets in probably as the final guard on the WNBA All Star rosters. On the other side of the country, you go to the West Coast, the Golden State Valkyries, expansion team, no true star power as of yet. Who's their best player? Kayla Thornton, 15 points per game on 39% shooting. Again, not sparkling offensively, but they've been a decent team, and she's been the best leader on that team. I think she probably gets the nod to the All Star game. And personally, I like that because I've got Thornton on both of my WNBA fantasy teams, and she's been excellent. And I've been pretty impressed with what she's done, even though, yeah, like the efficiency numbers are not necessarily there. I just, I just like her game. I just do. There are many ways to win, as we name this podcast, and some of them are not efficiency, right? Some of them are just not sparkling, not shiny. That doesn't mean you're not an all star. I would also say there's a chance that Natasha Cloud will make the cut because she ended up number one, particularly high in the player voting. She was fourth among guards, despite having a role alongside Sabrina Ionescu in New York, where I think people thought, well, Sabrina's really the star up there. Well, Cloud has been, I think, particularly important to their success this season in going after a repeat in the WNBA. And I think she was well thought of by her peers in that regard. And I think it makes a difference also if New York ends up having Sandy Brondello be one of the two WNBA All Star team coaches. And that depends on winning percentage going into the July 4th weekend. And New York certainly has a chance to be one of those two teams. It could be New York. It could also be Phoenix. It could also be um, the the Minnesota Lynx, right? So Nate Tibbetts and Cheryl Reeve, depending on how things shake out over the course of the next 2 days. Now, what you have to also consider is the fact that Brittany Sykes, being probably the best player in Washington, or at least the highest scoring player in Washington, can get the nod at the guard spot as well. Now, I recognize, again, she's a volume scorer. She does a ton of work at the free throw line. And Kiki Irifen, honestly, has been the one who's get the most pub from Washington on that team. But I do think Sykes is a potential all-star nod based on the way she has scored and the way she has lifted Washington beyond what their expectations were for this season. The last name I would chip in is Ryan Howard of the Atlanta Dream because she is leading the league in three-pointers going into July. And when you look at who's on that dream team that has really helped them rise under first-year head coach Carl Smezko, you see Howard. She's not shooting at a very high clip. You also see that Alicia Gray has already been recognized for her contributions being a starter among the guards. But I think the way that Howard has scored certainly impacts the way the Dream has performed. And I think, again, when you're talking about specialty skills, I think Howard could sneak into that game, and she's bagging a lot of shots from deep. So I think that is going to help her ultimately. So if you think about all of those players, right, the ones you get in shooting 40% or less, Angel Reese, right? Who else do you have? Kelsey Plum, Caitlin Clark, Satu Sabally, Sabrina Ionescu, Marina Mabrey, Kayla Thornton, Natasha Cloud, Brittany Sykes, Ryan Howard. That's 10 players that could be in the WNBA All-Star game shooting 40% or less. And that doesn't mean it's going to be a bad WNBA All-Star game. But on paper, it would be a little bit shocking. I don't know if Howard makes it. I think she's probably the last one out, but we'll have to find out.